The broadcast is now starting. All attendees are in listen-only mode.
Hello, everyone.
Go ahead.
Welcome to this 9th webinar on the Secret Doctrine by Helena Petrovna Blavatsky. This and all subsequent sessions will be available on makara.us under the subtitle Open Webinars. By now you may know how to get that. We were just talking about the possibility of porting this series to YouTube. So possibly at some future time, all of these will be available on YouTube, which would be terrific. Okay, we begin each webinar by tracing HPB and Colonel Olcott's travels as described in Olcott's old diary leaves. And last month, we caught up with them while they were staying with A.P. Sinnott, who is a renowned theosophical writer in his own right, at his home in Allahabad. So the first story for this month takes place on that same evening. Some of you may remember the story about the roses falling on and amongst Sinnott's guests, precipitated by HPV. Right? So this just happens at the end of that evening. And then the second story, we're only going to do two today because we have a lot to cover, takes place a few weeks later. So let's get a reader for this first story.
Carrie, can you read that for us, please?
Okay. But we had not done with the evening surprises. Dr. Thibault finally took leave, and I conducted him to the entrance, where I lifted the purdah to give him egress. Damodar followed after me with the light, a student reading lamp with shade, a vertical rod for the body of the lamp to slide upon, and a ring at top to carry it by. HPB also left her seat and was approaching us. The doctor and I exchanged a remark on the beauty of the night, shook hands, and he turned to go. I was just dropping the curtain when I saw on HPB's face that strange look of power which almost always preceded a phenomenon. I called back our guest and pointed to HPB, who spoke never a word until she took the lamp from Damodar's hand, held it by her left forefinger, looked fixedly at it, pointed at it with her right forefinger, and in an imperious tone said, "Go up." The flame rose, and rose until it came to the top of the chimney. "Go down," said she. It slowly descended until it burned bluish at the wick. "Go up," she exclaimed. "Up, I command you." The obedient flame once more mounted to the top of the chimney. "Down," she cried, and once more it sank to the point, almost of extinction. Whereupon she returned the lamp to Damodar, nodded to the doctor, and went into her bedroom. This, again, is a plain, unexaggerated tale of what really happened in our presence. If the skeptic would explain away the rose shower incidents by the theory of confederacy, at least here was one instance of a genuine phenomenon to which the theory of fraud does not apply. She said it was very simple. A Mahatma was there, invisible to all but herself, and he had just turned the lamp up and down while she spoke the words. This was one of two explanations given by her at different times, the other being that she had the power over the elementals of fire, and they obeyed her commands. I think this is the more probable of the two. As for the facts, they are indisputable, and everybody is free to attach his own theory to them. To me, the incident was one more in a long series going to prove her possession of real and extraordinary psychical powers, facts upon which I could fall back whenever her good faith might be challenged by her critics or impugned by her own indiscretions of language and of actions. Here Intimate friends believed in her in spite of her often feverish outbursts of temper.
Thanks very much, Carrie. Nice reading. Okay, so our second story, could we get a reader for this one? This is a few weeks later.
Michael, can you read that for us, please?
Yes. On the evening of the 25th of June, 1880, HPB, Damodar, and I had an experience of a most delightful character. We three had driven out in the open phaeton that Damodar had presented to HPB to the farther end of the causeway known as Worley Bridge to enjoy the cool sea breeze. A magnificent electric storm was raging, unaccompanied with rain, the flashes being so vivid as to light up the neighborhood almost like day. HPB and I smoked, and we all chatted about this and that, when we heard the sound of many voices coming from the seashore to our right, from a bungalow situated on a transverse road not far from the corner where we sat. Presently, a party of well-dressed Hindus, laughing and talking together, came in sight, passed us, and entered their carriages, which were drawn up in line on the Worley Road, and drove off to town. To see them, Damodar, who was sitting with his back to the driver, stood up and looked over the box. As the last party of convivial friends were coming abreast of our carriage, he silently touched my shoulder and motioned with his head that I was to look at something in that direction. I stood up and saw behind the last group a single human figure approaching. He, like the others, was dressed in white, but the whiteness of his costume positively made theirs look gray, as the electric light makes the brightest gaslight appear dull and yellow. The figure was a head taller than the group which preceded him, and his walk was the very ideal of graceful dignity. As he came about as far as our horse's head, he deflected from the road in our direction, and we too, to say nothing of HPB, saw that it was a Mahatma. His white turban and dress, mass of dark hair dropping to his shoulders, and full beard, made us think it was the Sahib. But when he came to the carriage side and stood not more than a yard from our faces, and laid his hand on HBB's left arm as it lay on the carriage body, and looked us in the eyes and responded to our reverential salutations, we then saw it was not he, but another whose portrait HPB wore, later in a large gold locket, and which many have seen. He spoke no word, but moved quietly towards the causeway, taking no notice of, nor, seemingly, exciting any from the Hindu guests as they rolled away in their carriages towards the town. The recurrent blazes of electric light lit him up as he stood by us, and his tall form showed against the horizon and the dark earth of the causeway. I noticed, too, that a lamp of the last of the carriages threw him up in high relief when he was some 50 feet away from us and on the causeway. There was no tree or bush to screen him from us, and, it may be believed, we watched him with intense concentration. One instant we saw him, the next he was gone, disappeared, like one of the lightning flashes. Under the strain of excitement, I jumped out of the carriage, ran to the spot where he was last seen, but no one was there. I saw nothing but the empty road and the back of the carriage that had just passed.
Thank you, Michael. Okay, we left off last month with a consideration of the various and many terms attempting to describe absolute abstract space. It's the column on the left. And according to HPB, its only attribute, absolute abstract motion, the upper column on the right. The third list gives the terms for cosmic substance, whose appearance marks the onset of a Mahamanvantara, or great period of manifestation. Absolute abstract space and absolute abstract motion are symbolized by the plain white disk at the top center of the chart. Then the first logos, the point within the circle, arises. On page 2 of the SD, HPB describes this first cause as a DT in that, which translates as potential space within abstract space. So I went searching for word instances of the first logos in the Secret Doctrine, and to my surprise, there's only one reference to the first logos worded as such in volume 1 of the SD. And it reads thus. I'll read this because it's short. When first the inconceivable, the beingless and sexless, the Kabbalistic Ein Sof, began to be in labor, i.e. when the hour of manifesting itself had struck, and desired that its ineffable should be born, the first logos, or eon, or aeon, and its invisible should be clothed with form, its mouth opened and uttered the word like unto itself. Of course, we know that logos means word. So, setting aside for a moment the questionable assertion that the inconceivable, beingless, and sexless can, quote, begin to be in labor, we have to concede that the divine essence, the Proem, has to, in some way, initiate a manvantara, though we're told that it's never in a direct manner, that it's not a creator. Still, how can undifferentiated abstract non-being initiate anything? The old commentary doesn't answer this question, though it does give us additional metaphors that we will consider in due time. Does anybody have any thoughts on this? Maybe eventually, as we read deeper into the material, we can make a pearl out of this bit of sand. And what I'm calling is a bit of sand is this kind of philosophical gap between the absolute abstract space and the manifested, or that is to say, the arising first logos. At any rate, the first logos arises before and is the creator of cosmic substance. So if we go back here a bit, we see that the column on the left and the upper right are descriptive of one reality, which is symbolized by that featureless white disk. And then the second figure, the symbol of the first logos, arises. And that's, at this point, all the information we have about that. It's not created by the ineffable, it arises. And through its agency, cosmic substance comes into being. So here's a Roerich painting of this level of reality, the Great Mother, which is the second logos, and is equated with cosmic substance. Okay. But anyway, the first logos arises before and is the creator of cosmic substance, the Great Mother. The second logos, kind of a cosmic version of the story of Adam's rib. Perhaps this rib is a veiled metaphor for the diameter that is characteristic of the Great Mother. But let's get back to the Proem. Can we get a reader for this paragraph, please?
Alexandra, can you read that for us, please?
Yes.
Thank you.
Hence it will be apparent that the contrast of these two aspects of the absolute is essential to the existence of the manifested universe. Apart from cosmic substance, cosmic ideation could not manifest as individual consciousness, since it is only through a vehicle of matter that consciousness wells up as I am I, a physical basis being necessary to focus a ray of the universal mind at a certain stage of complexity. Again, apart from cosmic ideation, cosmic substance would remain an empty abstraction and no emergence of consciousness could ensue.
Thank you. And this term upadi is the Sanskrit for vehicle. Thoughts, questions? This is a very important teaching. The total interdependence of cosmic substance and cosmic ideation, we could say, is one indication of their essential unity. For not only can neither initiate manifestation without the other, but the whole scheme of graded awareness depends on their interrelationship. Any thoughts or questions about this paragraph?
I don't see anything so far.
Yeah, that's fine. There's also a question mark that comes up here.
Okay. Oh, sorry. I do have one now.
Okay, I'll finish my statement and then we'll get to that.
Okay.
HPB says, hence it will be apparent that the contrast of these two aspects, well, up until now, she has said that there's only one aspect of the absolute, right, which is absolute motion, and that the second is, which is cosmic substance, definitely belongs to those periods of Manvantara, right? So maybe that's a niggle, but I think at this level, it's important to be as clear as we can about these ideas. So yes, your question or comment?
Hi, it seems like cosmic ideation may be trying to convey to our limited minds the idea of cosmic abstract thought generating purpose, being purpose for the manifestation of what will come. You know, because it's starting out as abstract, and you know.
Yes. Well, actually, this idea of cosmic ideation, if you look up here in the top right corner, absolute abstract motion, you can see that one of these is pre-cosmic ideation, interestingly, which is, you know, it's just a linguistic, language is so inadequate here, right? All we can know is that this stands in a causal relation to cosmic ideation. But this column, this little group on the upper right, is part of, or one with, this idea of abstract motion, right? Which is the one attribute of absolute abstract space before manifestation. So the sense, gosh, what do you call it? The nature of Mahat, which is another term for ideation, is intrinsic and inherent in absolute abstract space, even as if just on a causal level, obviously just on a causal level. right? Another term that suggests that are the three at the bottom: universal mind, the pure noumenon, which all just means source of thought, and immutable divine thought. So these are seen as being, you know, of the nature of the absolute abstract space. Yes, Michael.
Even in our limited abilities to manifest, it all begins with thought.
Mm.
And it's in an abstract sense before it becomes concrete.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. So that's the microcosm of this.
So that really leads into that as above, so below.
Mm. Indeed. Thanks, Michael. So the contrast of the two aspects of the absolute, the one that she's lumping in that wasn't there before is cosmic substance, right? And so she's now shifted her orientation in this way. So we're really seeing here now the top of the food chain, so to speak, is now the first logos, right? And through cosmic substance, the second logos comes into being. So any more thoughts or questions about this
Yes.
important paragraph? Yes.
Go ahead, please, Jeff.
Yeah, hi.
Oh, hey, Jeff.
Yeah, hi.
It's early over there. Thank you very much.
No, thank you. It's a good thing to do before I go to work. This, I'm trying to sense where this would be on our diagram of planes. You know, we're familiar with the cosmic physical plane, you know, divided into 7 different areas, and of course it stretches into ad infinitum, and somewhere up the top there, this, you know, undifferentiated primordial voidal type space must be there.
Right.
Yeah. And of course, when we look at the diagram, there's still beings there, you know, and of course that leads me to think that in the description of this, you know, she's dividing these factors into these different aspects to give us some understanding, but in fact, this doesn't exist in that reality.
Exactly.
No, there never has been what she's describing here as any of these separate realities as such. But somehow we're trying to find a beginning of something that didn't have such a thing.
Yeah, I mean, we're approaching this with lower mind and hopefully stimulating higher mind, which is so incredibly far removed from the reality she's attempting to describe that obviously we're getting no real understanding. However, it's the first step. As to the charts that you, I think I know the chart you're talking about, and I have it illustrated here, but it may be 20 slides down the way, and so I'm not going to click forward to it. But what I remember is that there's, it goes up through the cosmic planes up to the cosmic Adi, and then above that you have the symbol of the third, then the second, then the first logos, and it says by that first logos, it says para Brahm, which I thought was a really interesting article. Not para Brahm, but para Brahm, which, it's like it suggests cycles, like this is, because it's connected with the first logos in that illustration, it's suggesting, the beginning of a Mahamanvantara, where it's yet another Parabrahm, right? And so this stage of absoluteness is even beyond that,
Yeah, so say when we're looking out into the physical depth of space, into sort of like peering into infinity, and we see, you know, with a lot of these graphics now, you know, these supernovas, and you know, it's just massive, isn't it?
Mm.
And
Yeah.
some of these star systems, which are massive, they're all suspended in this absolute space.
Mm.
But she's trying to, you know, go back to that root source, I gather. And I mean, because in the previous one with the dot, I mean, it's a dimensionless realm with a being, and how now we have the line across, which is of course is representative of 2 dimensions, which is from, you know, in some of the formulas, it's he speaks of it as being from here to there, which is you know, speaking of time again, is what you're referring to, and of a dimension of space as well. Yeah,
because we quickly move out of space as we recognize it as we move up into consciousness. You know, 3 dimensions is like the flat worlders, you know. DK, who doesn't speak much of this level of reality, being practical as he is, still speaks of, you know, 4th, 5th, and dimensions beyond that. And certainly you're well into, you know, 10-dimensional reality way before you even approach the levels of consciousness that we're considering now. And I'd like to address something else you said, which is that, you know, it's science has, you know, greatly extended our scope in terms of our understanding of how huge, you know, the universe that we exist in is, you know, through modern instrumentation and measurement. It's interesting to see that HPB was doing the same thing. Well, the entire Theosophical movement, and of course the ancient wisdom teachings before that, were doing the same thing on the inner levels, you know, philosophically, but that extension, of course, far outpaces the extension that's been achieved by science. That sits well within, you know, one Manvantara, you know, so. Anything else, Jeff?
She also says that somewhere in there, one of those wonderful terms she uses is space as an entity.
Yeah.
Now, I get it that she's referring to the one in whom we live and move and have our being, and she may be referring to that in the cosmic sense, you know.
Yeah, and I think you go to the first logos with that. You know.
Yeah.
And if you go to the one life, the idea of the one life, which, you know, is both immanent and transcendent. So it's not, you know, we don't seek it by going out into space. It is all permeating, right? And I think that concept is probably the closest we can get to what's being described here, in terms of something that we can relate directly to our own realities.
So then, Francis, can we say that, you know, dividing it into its parts, component parts, we have this primordial, undifferentiated space, and then we have this, do you call it a being? And out of that, this purpose arose of manifestation.
Yeah, I don't think you can use parts when you're talking about the absolute, but I think, you know, what you said after that is correct as we understand it to this point, you know, in these teachings, which is there was like a self-arising being, the first logos, from which the second logos, which is cosmic substance, but then also that these are consciousnesses, and yet you know, the whole concept of consciousness is at a further level of development than what we're talking about here, you know, singularity. And that, you know, that's the mistake that most religions fall for, which is they want a supreme singularity, right? And she's, you know, basically spends the whole proem trying to break that down out, and she does it again in the next few pages, you know, of distinguishing the way that the Western religions, for the most part, view the supreme being, right, as compared to the Eastern religions, where you have such terms as non-being, you know, and the absolute all, which transcends any singularity, right? It gets to that level of beingness or be-ness, you know. So that's, you know, I mean, I think you'd agree, that's mostly what the proem has been about, trying to pitch us up into that. So with this, you know, we're starting to descend with these, you know, with the idea of cosmic ideation, which in some mysterious way is one with that absolute space. It's part of the great breath, you know. But with that, and then it's impressing upon cosmic substance, we start to begin that long journey into the Manvantara or Mahamandantara. So, anything else, Jeff?
No, thank you, Francis.
Yeah, my pleasure. Okay. This linking agent between ideation and substance brings us into a whole new phase of the teaching. See, actually, here we go. And this introduces a new idea. Could we, even though it's short, let's get a reader for this.
Helen, can you read that for us, please?
Yes, the manifested universe, therefore, is pervaded by duality, which is, as it were, the very essence of its existence as manifestation. But just as the opposite poles of subject and object, spirit and matter, are but aspects of the one unity in which they are synthesized, so in the manifested universe there is that which links spirit to matter, subject to object.
Okay, so we have a new concept here, and which turns us into a very important new idea. So could we get a reader for this paragraph, please?
Leslie, can you read that for us, please?
Is she self-muted?
Yeah, let's see. Nicholas, can you?
There she is. There she is.
I was going to ask Nicholas, but I hear too much echo.
Yeah.
Scott.
Okay, someone else.
Can you please?
Sure. This something, at present unknown to Western speculation, is called by the occultists Fohat. It is the bridge by which the ideas existing in the divine thought are impressed on cosmic substance as the laws of nature. Fohat is thus the dynamic energy of cosmic ideation, or, regarded from the other side, it is the intelligent medium, the guiding power of all manifestation, the thought divine, transmitted and made manifest to through the Dayan Kohans, the architects of the visible world. Thus, from spirit or cosmic ideation comes our consciousness. From cosmic substance, the several vehicles in which that consciousness is individualized and attains to self or reflective consciousness. While Fohat, in its various manifestations, is the mysterious link between mind and matter, the animating principle electrifying every atom into life.
Okay, thanks, Scott. So I'm going to repeat one sentence. It is the bridge by which the ideas existing in the divine thought are impressed on cosmic substance as the laws of nature. This is a very important paragraph because this is a major new concept. Here's the definition from the Theosophical Glossary. Could we get a reader, please?
Mm-hmm.
Sheldon, can you read that for us, please?
Fohat, Tibetan Mongolian cosmic life or vitality, bipolar cosmic vital electricity, equivalent to the light of the Logos.
Naive Prakriti.
Thank you, thank you. I could barely see it.
I know it's
Eros, that one I can see. The fiery whirlwind, and so on. As the bridge between spirit and matter, Fohat is the collectivity of intelligent forces through which cosmic ideation impresses itself upon substance, thus forming the various worlds of manifestation. In the manifested universe, it is that occult electric vital power which, under the will of the creative Logos, unites and brings together all forms, giving them the first impulse, which becomes in time law. Fohat becomes the propelling force, the active power which causes the one to become two and three and so on. Then Fohat is transformed into that force which brings together the elemental atoms and makes them aggregate and combine. Wow.
Yeah, makes them aggregate and combine.
Aggregate, thank you, yes.
Yeah,
and
that's how that works now.
Yeah, good. Make it a verb.
Yeah.
Fohat is ever present and active from the primordial beginnings of a Manvantara to its last end, nor does it then actually pass out of existence, but becomes quiescent or latent, as it were, sleeping or dormant during the cosmic pralaya.
Okay, thanks, Sheldon. So we get a little clue here as to another quality of cosmic ideation, which is this sleeping Fohat, right? It becomes quiescent, which is, I would say, would suggest that it withdraws back into this quality of cosmic ideation. Okay, back
Francis?
to the text. Yeah.
You have a question from Anne Veronica. She wants to know if it's the cosmic Antakarana.
It's not, because it's the only reason I say that is because HPB says very specifically that it is other than an Antakarana. Otherwise, I would say, yeah, that sounds right to me, because it has this bridging quality. But possibly the reason that she says it's not is that the Antakarana is built on the evolutionary path. That is to say, it's built from below to above, right? But in another way, it's just semantics, because it is the bridging agent, right? Otherwise, without Fohat, there would be no existence. And she she describes this as, and I think it's in the next paragraph. So I would say in terms of conceptually, it's a bridging agent, but because it reaches from above downwards in the involutionary period to impress itself on substance, that it's not of the nature of an Antakarana. Okay, any other thoughts or questions about this?
Yes, Carrie wants to know, what is the source of the picture on the left?
The internet. Sorry, Carrie, I can't be more descriptive. If I had another week, I could research all the images I used, and I didn't on this one. And sometimes there's not really any information. I don't think there was on this one, because if it's by a major artist, I note it, right? But sometimes it's just, you just find it as an image descriptive of some idea, and I collect these and hold them in a kind of separate document, and then I go through and find them to use when I think they're appropriate. So I can tell you that it wasn't created with, well, at least I don't know that it was created with the idea of depicting Fohat, which is often the case. It's just my own intuition that makes the link. So, any other questions?
That's all I see right now. Oops.
Okay.
Hold on.
Okay.
Go ahead, Jeff. You're self-muted.
Yeah, so this seems like quite a big jump, Francis, from where we were before,
Yeah.
because this is the that sort of psychic energy that gives livingness or transmits life throughout this manifested world,
Yeah.
and it's directed by a will.
Yeah. Yes. So you have, the absolute, which always and forever stands infinitely beyond this self-arising first logos, right? Because there's been infinite, countless number of, even of Mahamanvantaras. So the first logos, which is in this mysterious way self-arising and yet linked to the absolute all, is already at a level of descent that is infinitely more manifest, you could say, than the absolute all, right? And then this next stage, which is what allows for Fohat to come into being, is the move to the second logos, because it not until cosmic substance comes into being, and of course, everybody realizes that here we're talking about noumenal substance. It's called in Sanskrit mula prakriti, as opposed to just your ordinary everyday prakriti that you could go down to Woolworths and get. It's noumenal substance, which is it's not until that stage that Fohat is, you could say, aroused from within the realm of cosmic ideation, right? And makes the link, makes the jump. And then things really start getting underway, right? This is also, I haven't exactly pinpointed it, but this is very much connected with the third logos, and the Davic realities that come into play then, form building as such. So, but I think we're still pre that the Fohat comes into play before that level of creation, right? This is the most noumenal impression of ideation into substance.
Well, we're delving into the greatest of all mysteries, I suppose, and hence why it's called a mystery.
Yeah, my guess is that you don't even get an inkling of this level of reality, you know, in the first many initiations. You know, you can get a, well, as Michael was saying, a lower octave sense of it. You know, for instance, the idea of the intuition impressing our mind/brains gives us a kind of spiritual metaphor for this, but it's in no way a real understanding or direct knowing of this. You know, it's one of the reasons that DK seldom deals at this level. It's, you know, he gives the basic propositions in the beginning of a treatise on cosmic fire and other places, you know, but then he moves into areas that he, as quote, a mere master of wisdom, can actually speak of, you know, with some authority. And that doesn't include this level of reality. Right? On the other hand, it's you know, it is said that he was one of the important masters that overshadowed HPB during this. So possibly because this was the beginning of this great dispensation of theosophy, that this material was, since they always seem to deal, even DK seems to deal with from above to below, that it was deemed important to initiate the secret doctrine with this material, you know.
Mm-hmm.
So, anything else, Jeff?
No, thank you.
Okay, thank you for your ideas. Okay, back to the text. We now get into a bit of a summary. Could we get a reader for this?
Frida, can you read for us, please? You're self-muted. Well, I don't see anything from her, so let's move down to James O. Can you read for us, please? Well, that's not working either, so let's go down to Lona. Can you read for us, please?
Yes, I do that. But I'm not so culturally reading. My mother language is not English, but okay, I will try to. The following summary will afford a clearer idea to the reader. 1. The absolute, the parabrahma of the Vedantians, or the one reality Sat, which is, as Hegel says, both absolute being and non-being. 2. The first manifestation, the impersonal and in philosophy unmanifested logos, the precursor of the manifested. This is the first cause, the unconscious of European pantheists. 3. Spirit, matter, life, the spirit of the universe, the parashut, the Purusha and Prakriti of the second logos. 4. Cosmic ideation, mahat or intelligence, the universal word soul, the cosmic noumenon of matter, the basis of the intellect, operation in and of nature, also called Mahabuddhi. The one reality, its dual aspects in the conditioned universe.
Thank you, Lona. Actually, you did a great job. So any thoughts or questions about this summary? We've looked at all these concepts, just developing the fourth now, right? And I think this is a useful clarification of the order of manifestation here. But any thoughts or ideas about this? Okay, the last couple of pages have been concerned with the following statement. The Secret Doctrine establishes three fundamental propositions. A, an omnipresent, eternal, boundless, and immutable principle. So that's what we've been looking at for the last 2 pages. Now we move on to B, which is a second proposition, okay? And even though, actually I'll read this, it's short. The eternity of the universe in toto as a boundless plane, periodically the playground of numberless universes, incessantly manifesting and disappearing, called the manifesting stars, the sparks of eternity. The eternity of the pilgrim is like a wink of the eye of self-existence, from the Book of Zahn. The appearance and disappearance of worlds is like a regular tidal ebb of flux and reflux. See part 2, Days and Nights of Brahma. Okay, so we're introduced with this to the second great theosophical tenet, which is the concept of cycles. DK also, in his basic propositions, this is the second concept, right? So let's take a look at the footnote. Oops. Somebody want to read this? Remember, the footnote was referencing the eternity of the pilgrim, which is the monad, right? So,
Jeff, can you read that for us? You're self-muted.
Here we go. Pilgrim is the appellation given to our monad, the two-in-one, during its cycle of incarnations. It is the only immortal and eternal principle in us, being an indivisible part of the integral whole, the universal spirit, from which it emanates and into which it is absorbed at the end of the cycle. When it is said to emanate from the one spirit, an awkward and incorrect expression has to be used for lack of appropriate words in English. The Vedantins call it Sutratma, thread soul, but their explanation too differs somewhat from that of the occultists, to explain which difference, however, is left to the Vedantins themselves.
Thanks, Jeff. So HPB gives no further description of how the Vedantins view the emanation of the monad. That would be interesting. Fortunately, DK describes this Sutratma at some length, but for now, we'll just have this brief quote on the monad from Esoteric Healing. It is life energy coming from the monad, which passes through the soul as a channel and medium of contact. Its direct channel is the Sutratma. It is not the Antakarana, or the creative thread, or the thread of consciousness. And I think it's this quote is the reason that I before said that this link between cosmic ideation and cosmic substance is not the Antakarana. Okay, let's get back to this, to the SD and the law of periodicity. She describes this here. Can we get a reader for this short paragraph?
Antoinette, can you read that for us, please?
This second assertion of the Secret Doctrine is the absolute universality of that law of periodicity, of flux and reflux, ebb and flow, which physical science has observed and recorded in all departments of nature, and alterations such as that of day and night, life and death, sleeping and waking, is a fact so common, so perfectly universal and without exception, that it is easy to comprehend that in it we see one of the absolutely fundamental laws of the universe.
Thank you. Of course, many of these cycles, such as ray cycles and the influence of astrological signs, stand in a causal relationship to the ones HPB mentions here, right, to observable nature. So now, unless there's questions about this idea of cycles, now she's going to talk at some length. This is just an introduction. We'll move on to the third tenet. Are there any questions on this second assertion?
I don't see any right now.
Okay, so let's, for the time being, move on. Could we get a reader, please?
Hold on a minute here. Bibi, can you read that for us, please? Okay, well, her name was jumping all around for me. Let's go. Asha, can you read that, please? You're self-muted. No, she's still self-muted. Okay, let's go down to Tanya. Your hand's up. Can you read that for us, please?
Yes, certainly. Moreover, the secret doctrine teaches, see the fundamental identity of all souls with the universal oversoul, the latter being itself an aspect of the unknown root, and the obligatory pilgrimage for every soul, a spark of the former through the cycle of incarnation, or necessity, in accordance with psychic and karmic law, during the whole term. In other words, no purely spiritual Buddhi, divine soul, can have an independent conscious existence before the spark which issued from the pure essence of the universal sixth principle, or the oversoul, has A, passed through every elemental form of the phenomenal world of that Manvantara, and B, acquired individuality, first by natural impulse, and then by self-induced and self-devised efforts, checked by its karma, thus ascending through all the degrees of intelligence, from the lowest to the highest manas, from mineral to plant, up to the holiest archangel, Dhyani Buddha. Secret
Thank you,
Doctrine, page
Tanya.
17. You're welcome.
Okay. Well, in one comprehensive paragraph, HPB describes the entire evolutionary path and states it to be the third tenet of the Secret Doctrine. And I think everyone here knows that when she speaks of the Secret Doctrine, she's not talking about the book she wrote. She's talking about the ancient wisdom teachings from which this book precipitated, right? The true Secret Doctrine on the inner side. I found it interesting that the oversoul is, that she describes the oversoul as an aspect of the unknown root, of course, being the absolute, or possibly the first logos, since root suggests that point at the center. As this ties our identities directly to the causeless cause that substands all creation, thus allowing us a way back to that one life through the process of evolution. a lot is introduced here, much of it familiar to us through DK, both in this this tenet of cycles, and then this third one of the, you could say, the fragmentation of the oversoul into the souls of all beings. So, any thoughts or questions on either of these two tenets?
I don't see anything right now.
Okay, here they are. We're told there are three fundamental propositions of this secret doctrine, which are: one, the existence of a boundless, immutable principle, a life aspect, which has eternal, ceaseless motion as its one aspect. And within that idea of eternal, ceaseless motion is the idea of cosmic ideation with a quiescent, Fohatic presence. So then two, the law of periodicity, which governs all manifestation. And three, the identity of all souls with the universal oversoul, and the obligatory pilgrimage of those souls, leading to individuality and eventual emancipation from the form aspect. So there we have it, in a sense, is the Proem in a nutshell. Okay, any thoughts or questions about just the existence of these three tenets, their order, or how they move one into another, or anything around this? It's not the end of the teachings on this by any means, but.
I don't see anything.
Okay, could we get a reader for this next paragraph?
Yes, let's. Carrie, can you read that for us, please?
Yeah. The pivotal doctrine of the esoteric philosophy admits no privileges or special gifts in man, save those won by his own ego through personal effort and merit, throughout a long series of metempsychoses and reincarnations. This is why the Hindus say that the universe is Brahma, for Brahma is in every atom of the universe. The six principles in nature being all the outcome, the variously differentiated aspects of the seventh and one, the only reality in the universe, whether cosmical or microcosmical. And also why the permutations, psychic, spiritual, and physical, on the plane of manifestation and form, of the sixth Brahma, the vehicle of Brahma, are viewed by metaphysical antiphrasis as elusive and myavic. For although the root of every atom individually and of every form collectively is that seventh principle or the one reality, still in its manifested phenomenal and temporary appearance, it is no better than an evanescent illusion of our senses. See, for clearer definition, addendum, gods, monads, and atoms, and also theophania, bodhisattvas, and reincarnation, etc., etc.
Thanks, Gary. Okay, let's take, again, this is a tremendous amount of information, but one part of it that is important to distinguish is this idea of Brahma and Brahma. Now, I don't know how to distinguish this pronunciation. If anyone of you does know how to pronounce that that sign over the final A of Brahma, you know, please come forward and pronounce it for us so that we can be enlightened by that. But I don't know. So I'm going to go with Carrie's idea, which is to just accentuate the last A in order to distinguish it, right? But anyway, yes.
We got a couple of hands at that. Let's see if they're willing to.
Good.
Scott, you want to give it a try?
Sure. Well, I was only going to point out that in my version of the SD, which is the 6-volume one and not the 3 that Francis is working from, this first Brahma is actually Brahman with an N on the end. So there's no, it's easier to distinguish that last A.
Sure would be. Yeah, yeah. It's amazing that an apocryphal version would have that.
Now.
Okay, so that's great, and that also makes it clear. So if you go back up, let's see, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 line down where it says Hindus say that the universe is Brahma, that would be Brahman, which, you know, even it just makes sense. It seems to, it makes it into a singularity rather than a universality, right? So great, thank you for that. And the other hand?
Yes, hold on just one second here. Tanya, please go ahead.
Yeah, I'm pretty much like to contribute by saying that I understand this duality. One would be Brahman, the creator, and Brahma, the creature. They're all one, you know, and they're present in every atom in the universe. Mm-hmm. So this has to do with Sanskrit, and but the vowels, you know, since our language, like Portuguese, we do have accents. It makes it very difficult for English-speaking people to observe the difference, but the first commentary is correct. Brahman is the first one as creator, and Brahma, the created or creature.
Yes. Okay.
I agree.
All right. So this is why Hindus say that the universe is Brahma and Brahma. For Brahma is in every atom of the universe, and that's what nails it right there. Right. Okay. As long as we understand the distinction, I think we'll, you know, we'll be able to get through this idea. Okay, I'd like to move on to the principles that are described here, the 7 principles. And first, this from the Theosophical Glossary. And Jeff, this is that chart I was citing before. And you see there at the cosmic Adi plane, not interestingly, not above the cosmic Adi plane, but you know, within it, you have this cosmic Parabrahman, which I find really interesting. Anyway, could we get a reader for this definition of the term principles from the Theosophical Glossary?
Michael, can you read that for us? You're self-muted. Thank you.
Okay. Principles, a beginning, foundation, source, or essence from which things proceed. Principles are thus the fundamental essences out of which and from which all things are and exist, usually enumerated as 7 in theosophical writings. These cosmic principles, corresponding to the 7 planes of the cosmos, the 7 basic types of consciousness, substance, of which the universe is formed, are manifested in the human being, so that we speak of the 7 human principles, copies in the small of the 7 principles of the universe.
Thanks, Michael. And here we have a chart that describes the cosmic principles along with the equivalent principles in a human being. By the way, the bodies of this illustrated figure are, of course, not in proportion to each other. each successive body is has much greater scope. This is just so it can be contained on a page, right? And I've color-coded the descriptions to match those bodies. So I think I'm going to do this myself. So we can just really, yeah. So the first principle is the unmanifested logos, Param Atman, cosmic monad and self. Now, I'm thinking this actually is a first logos, not the absolute non-being. You know, because, well, I suppose it's arguable, but that's what I'm thinking this. Especially because when we look at number 2, we have universal ideation as the second logos, right? Interesting. That varies with what we've been reading. Anyway, back to number 1. Unmanifested logos, Param Atman, cosmic monad, self. In the human being, and it's the outer ring on the figure, you have Atman, spirit, essential self, right? Okay. 2, universal ideation, which here is being called the second logos. Now, before we've equated the second logos with universal substance rather than universal ideation. So anyway, the terms associated with that are alaya and adibhuti. On the individual level, it's buddhi or spiritual soul. Okay, then 3, universal intelligence. The third logos, Mahat, cosmic mind. And I think we're back on par with the logi here. And that's manas, mind, and the human soul, right? The sons of mind. Okay, and then 4th, cosmic energy, chaotic, cosmic kama, which is desire, and the womb of Fohat. And on the individual level, kama, desire, and animal soul. 5, cosmic life essence or energy, cosmic jiva. Individually, it's prana, life essence, and vitality. 6, astral ideation, reflecting terrestrial things, cosmic ether, astral light, and that is associated with the linga sharira, which translates into being the model body, right? 7, the cosmos, physical universe, the sthura or stula sharira, and that's the physical body, the stula sharira of the individual. Okay, you can tell that my source for this is not specifically, it's, you could say, old school theosophy as opposed to the Alice Bailey works, because they're the ones that describe these bodies in these terms. So, and it doesn't exactly line up, but you get the general idea. Okay, any questions about these principles? You know, they're very much related to these planes, right? On a human level, you'd be all the way down here at this lower 7 planes here, right? And then on a cosmic level, it would be associated with each of these 7 planes, 1 through 7. See how that works? Okay. All right. Any questions about these principles?
I don't see any so far.
Okay. All right. Let's get back to the text of the Secret Doctrine. If you remember, I'll be throwing these reminders up on occasion The Akasha is the shining ether, cosmic space. The fifth cosmic element, subtle, supersensuous spiritual essence which pervades all space. So with that, could we get a reader for this?
Scott, can you read that for us, please?
In its absoluteness, the one principle, under its two aspects, of Parabhakman and Mula Prakriti, is sexless, unconditioned, and eternal. Its periodical, manvantaric emanation, or primal radiation, is also one, androgynous, and phenomenally finite. When the radiation radiates in its turn, all its radiations are also androgynous, to become male and female principles in their lower aspects. After Pralaya, whether the great or the minor Pralaya, the latter leaving the worlds in status quo, the first that reawakens to active life is the plastic Akasha, Father-Mother, the spirit and soul of ether, or the plane on the surface of the circle. Space is called the mother before its cosmic activity, and Father-Mother at the first stage of reawakening. See comment stanza 2. In the Kabbalah, it is also Father-Mother Son. But whereas in the Eastern doctrine, these are the seventh principle of the manifested universe, or its Atma Buddhi Manas, spirit, soul, intelligence, the triad branching off and dividing into the seven cosmical and seven human principles in the Western Kabbalah of the Christian mystics, it is the triad or trinity. And with their occultists, the male, female, Jehovah, Jehovah.
Okay, so the first sentence of this paragraph is by now a familiar thing, right? Just yet another description of the one principle, right? The connecting tissue, so to speak, between the one life and a manvantara is its, quote, emanation or primal radiation. Notice how it differs from the first principle by being, though androgynous, periodic and phenomenally finite, right? That's the giveaway that we are now talking about, that source of energy that initiates the manvantara, right? I'm thinking that this must be Fohat at its highest level. You know, the Fohat is sometimes described as 7 Fohatic brothers, and this would be that highest level of electrical interconnection, which awakens the Akasha, which, you know, it says after Pralaya, Akasha is the first to awake, right? Which is this the sensuous spiritual essence, right? And it's that radiation which awakens this. Okay, so we're still at a very primal level here. We then have described a very interesting, in this paragraph here, we have described a very interesting hierarchy of the terms mother and father, which places the mother in the more causal position. She describes mother as space before its cosmic activity, and father-mother at the first stage of reawakening, which I think would be a first logos position. Okay. Any questions about this paragraph before we head on into the SD? Any other ideas, questions?
I don't see anything so
Nothing.
far. Yeah, there we go. Hold on. Please go ahead, Jeff.
Yes, it's interesting that she's describing this thing, because it is a thing, as phenomenally finite. Now, to my mind, when something is phenomenally finite, it has a purpose, and once the purpose is reached, it has no reason to be. You know, it disintegrates. So there's this principle active in here already, isn't there?
Yeah.
You know, the dial's already cast. It's the pattern is set, and you know, it's all held in potential, but there's nothing that can stop this movement.
Yeah, and I think it's, you know, you really have to equate this radiation that's she describes with the emanation of the word, you know, of the logos itself. And that, as we know, is described as being continuous, and that when it's withdrawn, this sound, that Manvantara moves into the pralaya, that it is that by which the entire Mahamanvatara is held in place. And so, you know, what you say is, I think, absolutely right, that it's by being phenomenally finite, it is you could say, the essential vibration of all that we call, you know, phenomenon, right? It is truly the noumenon. You know, the word noumenon is also related to sound. It's the noumenon of all existence. And I can't imagine that this primal radiation is not associated with that sound aspect, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Thanks, Jeff. Anything else?
No, but you know how it is when we're reading these things, you really want to slip into some realm of contemplation and delve into it, and of course we don't have the luxury of that.
No, it's so true.
Yeah.
It's, you know, one of the advantages of a webinar over just reading this material is that it slows it all down. You know, we're only on page 18, and this is the 9th webinar. That's about 2 pages a time. But you can see why when you come across a paragraph like this, and each of the preceding paragraphs as well, that there is so much said, and there's so much within the substance of these teachings, that if there's any hope of absorption, that we have to slow this process of, quote, just reading way down. On the other hand, the disadvantage of the webinar is that we can't just set the book aside and go into a meditation, you know, on the concept. So, you know, I invite you all to get a copy of the Secret Doctrine, and you know, which you can do online. It's available for free as an ebook, and, you know, contemplate these concepts of the Proem. It would serve you well, and you could bring your results to the next webinar and tell us what you came up with.
Mm-hmm.
Thanks, Jeff.
Well, one of the things is, of course, that to be mindful that this is not happening somewhere else, and that in the description of phenomenally finite, we're suspended in that formula right there, aren't we? We're participating in this cycle.
Yeah, you could even say we are it, you know, that even at an atomic level, you know, I mean, when Einstein came along, the jig was up in terms of the illusion of matter, right? It's all energy, right? So we're variations of the energy of which the primal radiation is this one sound, right? But it stands at the very core of who and what we are. Yeah. So another point that she brings out, is the tremendous difference and the fundamental difference between Western Kabbalah and Christian thinking, where the highest level is the male-female reality Jehovah, or Yahweh, which literally describes the two aspects, Yah being the male and Hava being the female, right? So, and she never tires, it seems, of underscoring the difference between the Western philosophies and the Eastern philosophies and the Western religions. That's that. Okay.
We have another hand.
Mm-hmm.
Scott, please go ahead.
Yeah, I was kind of, what I see here she's alluding to and speaks of later is how you go from 1 to 3 to 10. And I think what we're dealing with here is she's pointing out there's an abstract triangle that's up on the Udi plane that she's referring to. The Western Kabbalah and whatnots say that's all there is. But what she's saying here is that stands supreme. And from that, the 7 manifest. And so you have the 3 and the 7 giving you the 10.
Yeah, which is, the Tetractys and the Tree of Life, which describes the 3 as standing in a causal relationship to the 7 below. Yeah, it's a good point. It's not, the 3 are not part of the 7. It's, that's another 3. That's the second principle, which is the triangle that stands above the cube, But
and the one that's on the Udi plane that you pointed out on the cosmic Udi plane, that triangle, that bare triangle sitting right there for the cosmic Parabrahman.
Yeah, exactly. Right. Yeah. Anyone else?
Yes.
It's a rich paragraph.
Go ahead, please, Victor.
Hi, everyone.
Hi, Victor.
I studied this for about 4 years, and then one time I was in a meditation, and it came to me, finally dawned on me. When she starts talking about duality, there is a concept or something that didn't ring true to me. You can't have 1 without 3. When you have all that is, and you have any expression of that, there's not 2, there's always 3. And the reason that is so is because, and even in the Secret Doctrine, and one of the aspects is about motion. If you have 2 forces, let me explain this in terms of forces, it makes a little bit more sense. If you have 2 forces, push and pull, which are actually the same force observed from a different perspective, but when you have those 2 forces, there is going to be motion between those 2, and that motion could be described as change. So when you have the 2, you can't have the 2 without the 3rd. There's always going to be motion. And if you look around you in the cosmos, there's always motion. We can isolate these things, these principles, and study them and teach them individually, but they don't exist individually. They exist as a trinity. And so there's no accident that on that Adi plane, that the symbol used for the logos, or whatever that symbol might be, it's represented as a triangle, which represents the trinity. So the monad, for example, is a trinity. The spiritual triad is a trinity. Each one of us is made up of a trinity. And even an atom cannot exist in manifestation without these trinities. You have a push, a pull, and an intelligent, conscious evolution of those electrons around the core of the atom. Otherwise, it would fly apart and you could have no atom. You would have nothing. So those three forces have to work in concert. And so there's where your trinity comes in.
Yeah.
And I hope I made a little bit sense on that.
Oh, it's really well said, Victor. You know, this is why the third logos is said to be the first manifesting logos. That the second logos, as you well pointed out, it's a principle of duality, but it's not in any way demonstrating that duality. It's like an energetic that then immediately leads to this third quality, which can be illustrated by the triangle. It's interesting that, you know, in Greek times, the idea of two-ness was considered to be like evil, like the devil, you know, in our modern ideas, because it represented that which was not one with the absolute all, right? But once you came to a triangle, they believe, the Greeks, that the order of unity was regained, but it was regained in manifestation as opposed to the absolute. So yeah, really well said. Thanks, Victor. Okay, any other questions or thoughts about this?
I don't see any right now.
Okay, onward. Let's see, where am I? Oh yeah, let's take a look at this footnote. I'll read it, it's short. It is not the physical organisms that remain in status quo, least of all their psychical principle during the great cosmic or even solar pralayas, but only their akashic or astral photographs. But during the minor pralayas, once overtaken by the night, the planets remained intact, though dead, as a huge animal caught and embedded in the polar ice remains the same for ages. One of the best things about this footnote is it allowed me to use this illustration, which of course I'm sure is not real, but there you have it. So again, she's saying that in a Mahamandantara, or at the dissolution of a Mahamandantara, all returns to the essential essence, and nothing is, there is no shadow of that which remained. But at a normal, or what she calls a minor pralaya or a solar pralaya, there is an akashic map or blueprint that is frozen in time or in space until the new Manvantara. Okay, could we get a reader for this next section?
Helen, can you read that for us?
Okay. In this lies the whole difference between the esoteric and the Christian trinities. The mystics and the philosophers, the Eastern and Western pantheists, synthesize their pre-genetic triad in the pure divine abstraction. The Orthodox anthropomorphize it.
There you go.
And, oh blimey,
Hiranyagarbha.
Hiranyagarbha, Hari, and Sankara.
Hiranyagarbha means the golden egg, by the way, the essential egg. Go ahead.
Hari and Sankara, the three hypostases and underlying reality or substance of the manifesting spirit of the Supreme Spirit, by which title Prithivi, the earth, greets Vishnu in his first avatar, are the purely metaphysical abstract qualities of formation, preservation, and destruction, and are the three divine avasthas, lit hypostases, of that which does not perish with created things, or Achyuta, a name of Vishnu, whereas the Orthodox Christian separates his personal creative deity into the three personages of the Trinity and admits of no higher deity. The latter, in occultism, is the abstract triangle, with the Orthodox the perfect cube. The creative God or the aggregate gods are regarded by the Eastern philosopher as
Brantidar. Go ahead.
Oh, you say it.
Well, I actually worked this word out because it it's such a strange one. Brantidarsanata.
Brantidarsanata, false apprehension, something conceived of by reason of erroneous appearances as a material form, and explained as arising from the elusive conception of the egotistic, personal, and human soul, lower fifth principle.
Okay, there's a lot of vocabulary here. You really got the short stick on this reading, didn't you? Thank you, you did great. But actually, the underlying concept it's not that hard to grasp. She's making a clear division between those who work in abstraction, what she calls the three hypostases, which are these underlying realities or substance, and see that as qualities of formation, preservation, and destruction. That is the essential Trinity. And, I have to again cite Victor for pointing this out, that, you can't have just two of these, formation, preservation, and destruction. It's the whole basis of, for instance, Hindu thought, right? Brahma, Vishnu, and Shiva. And the contrast to the anthropomorphized way that is so often taken in the West, and the tremendous error that leads followers of this anthropomorphic system into, in terms of philosophical thought, has real world effects. This error. It's one of the reasons that she goes to such lengths to point it out. Now, there's a lot more than just that in here. Fascinating, cultural trinities like, Hiranyagarbha, Hari, and Shankara, and this idea of Prithivi, the earth, which greets Vishnu in his first avatar. But we're not going to go into that. It's, it would just slow us down to a crawl to try to bring into our awareness, all these other forms of understanding. But the essence of this paragraph, I hope, is clear. All right. Any thoughts or ideas connected with this on any level? Either as the idea of the abstraction versus the anthropomorphization, or any specifics within this. Anybody have any thoughts or questions? No?
I don't
Okay.
see anything right now.
Okay, let's move forward. Can we get a reader for this, please? It's actually a short paragraph with a longer.
Okay. Okay. Jeff has his hand up, and Jeff, can you read for us too?
Yeah, sure. Just in that last paragraph, that's the first time that she's actually mentioned the Earth here.
Oh, yeah.
In this series, and so my thoughts are that this is describing the creation of the Earth scheme.
Mm.
And the globes and change and all of the phenomena.
Yeah.
Of that creative act. So she just introduced that.
Right, it's true. And she uses the creation of the Earth scheme as kind of an offhanded example of how these metaphysical abstract qualities work.
Yeah.
Which talk about speaking
work in
on
progress.
Yeah, right. But it's that's. I'm glad you pointed that out. It's literally the first time in the Secret Doctrine that this concept of our Earth has, that it's touched ground to that level, right? And of course, that's way down the line in terms of the stanzas of Zam, and to when it gets to something as local as our Earth. So at this level, her fundamental thrust is these metaphysical abstract qualities. Right? Thanks, Jeff. Could you read for us this?
It is beautifully expressed in a new translation of Vishnu Purana. That Brahma, in its totality, has essentially the aspect of Prakriti, both evolved and unevolved, Malaprakriti, and also the aspect of spirit and the aspect of time. Spirit, O twice born, is the leading aspect of the supreme Brahma. The next is a twofold aspect, Prakriti both evolved and unevolved, and is the time last. Kronos is shown in the Orphic theogony as being also a generated god or agent. Thus Spencer, who nevertheless, like Schopenhauer and von Hartmann, only reflects in an aspect of the old esoteric philosophers, and hence lands his readers on the bleak shore of agnostic despair, reverently formulates the grand mystery, that which persists unchanging in quality but ever changing in form, under the sensible appearances which the universe presents to us in an unknown and unknowable power, which we are obliged to recognize as without limit in space and without beginning or end in time. It is only daring theology, never science or philosophy, which seeks to gauge the infinite and unveil the fathomless and unknowable.
Any thoughts or questions about this short paragraph and long footnote? I see there's a hand.
Go ahead, please, Scott.
Yeah, I was just going to point out the quote you have there is a little the words are out of order. It actually reads, yeah, it's Prakriti both evolved and unevolved, and time is the last.
Yeah, oh, I see, yeah.
Time is the last.
Rather than, and is the time last.
Yeah.
And time is the last, of course. Yeah, well, you get 2 points for your version today.
Thank you.
Yeah. I actually meant to go back and suss this out and correct it because I knew it wasn't right, but I forgot to do that. So thank you. Yeah. So that's an important point too, that the last aspect to evolve in this process of involutionary process is time itself, right? And then she goes on to illustrate that by saying Cronus is shown in the Orphic theogony as being also a generated God or agent, therefore created, right? So yeah, it's a good point.
But I think of time as I think it's the DK. I got the idea, I think, from DK in our reading that time is a human. The aspect of time as we know it anyway is a human construct. It doesn't exist outside of the limited lower mind of humans. And yet this is suggesting it's well beyond that, and it's a capital T. So it's a different time we're talking about here.
Yeah, I think it is. You know, there couldn't really be Manvantaras without, well, this relates, I think if you really want to take it all the way up, you have to go to the second tenet, which is cycles.
Yes.
Because what would govern cycles if not time? It seems that it's an inherent to it. Of course, it's not time, as you pointed out, it's not time as we experience it. I mean, I've heard that, you know, even those that get in touch with the deceased find that the nature, and DK says this at some point, that the nature of experience, once you're out of form, in terms of time, is radically different. Even when you are still bound by time, that it moves much faster, so that a week spent in physical existence is just a few moments out of existence, right? So it's like the grip of time is loosened, and you know, who knows after that? You know, because that's just the level of a being who's returning to its soul, you know, who's just out of form, right? Let alone, you know, the levels of, for instance, the monad. But this, as you say, would suggest that there is some elemental sense or aspect of time. Yeah. Any other comments on that? So does everybody understand the difference between Prakriti, evolved and unevolved? It's Prakriti and Mula Prakriti. Everybody get that? Okay, it's all it is that Mula Prakriti stands in a causal relationship. It's once described, I think earlier, one of the earlier webinars, as the thin veil thrown across spirit. It's akashic in its nature, right? It's akasha, whereas Prakriti is still numinal compared to physical substance, but it's more defined in terms of its manifestation. Okay, so if there's no more questions, we shall move ahead. Can we get a reader for this paragraph?
Sure. Let's see. Sheldon, can you read that for us, please?
At this stage of a reawakening of the universe, the sacred symbolism represents it as a perfect circle with the root point in the center. This sign was universal, therefore we find it in the Kabbalah also. The Western Kabbalah however, now in the hands of Christian mystics, ignores it altogether, though it is plainly shown in the Zohar. These sectarians begin at the end and show us the symbol of pre-genetic cosmos, this sign, calling it the union of the rose and cross, the great mystery of occult generation, from whence the name Rosicrucians, Rose Cross.
Thanks, Sheldon. So do you see how this relates to this previous paragraph? What she's doing yet again is contrasting the Eastern philosophy of causal deity, you could say, and the anthropomorphized Western form. Right? She goes on to say, this is, we'll just continue because this is specifically related. In fact, Sheldon, could you continue reading?
As may be judged, however, from the most important as the best known of the Rosicrucian symbols, there is one which has never been hitherto understood, even by modern mystics. It is that of the pelican, tearing open its breast to feed its 7 little ones. The real creed of the Brothers of the Rosy Cross, and a direct outcome from the Eastern Secret Doctrine. Brahma, neuter, is called Kalahansa, meaning, as explained by the Western Orientalists, the eternal swan, or goose. A great mistake is thus brought under notice. It is Brahma, neuter, who ought to be referred to as Yalansa Vahana, he who uses the swan as his vehicle, and not Brahma, creator, who is the real Kalahansa, while Brahma, neuter, is Hamsa and Ahamsa, as will be explained in the commentary. Let it be understood that the terms Brahma and Parabrahman are not used here because they belong to our esoteric nomenclature, but simply because they are more familiar to the students in the West. Both are the perfect equivalents of our 1, 3, and 7 voweled terms, which stand for the one, all, and the one, all in all.
Okay, great. Thank you, Sheldon. Okay. So to go back, let's to the top part of this paragraph. The idea of the pelican, here it's just shown the 3 little ones, but in fact I've seen where there are 7. And we get back to what Scott was talking about, where you have the higher 3 and the lower 7, that this would be, you know, a metaphor for that, which is that the very act of manifestation of the unmanifest is inherently sacrificial, right? And that the 7, which, you know, would be the manifested principles and planes, feed on the essence of that triplicity, right? And that this is the basis, this concept is the basis of the Brothers of the Rosy Cross. There is the esoteric symbol as opposed to, you know, this cross in the center of the rose, which, you know, has its own esoteric qualities, but when you're looking for the source of all being, this is the more esoteric symbol. Right? And then we get into this idea of Kalahansa. It's a fascinating concept. Kalahansa is a vehicle of the Most High. So who belongs on its back? Not the creator God, Brahma, because that is itself the vehicle of the absolute, which is the Brahma-neuter principle, right? So again, you have this esoteric and exoteric understanding of the symbol on the right? Just depending on the school that you're looking at. So, okay, any thoughts or questions about this, about the subject matter here?
Yes, we've got a hand up.
Okay.
Go ahead, please, Jeff.
Yeah, Francis, yeah, she's introducing here the law of sacrifice as the underlying motivating principle of this creative act.
Yeah, I think so, yeah. She kind of sneaks it in, but yes, indeed. Right. It's one of the fundamental qualities of the first ray, which is one with the first principle, which is deity. Right? So yes, it's inherent. You could probably go all the way back to the absolute, and that quality of divine ideation, or the great breath, that the seeds of sacrifice are inherent, you could say, in the purpose of the absolute. Yeah.
Yes, I think that's true. Yeah. But it's one of those points of revelation is the will is an aspect of the law of sacrifice. Gives it its perspective.
Yeah. And not the other way around. Yeah. Yeah. The will is governed by sacrifice, Yeah. Well, folks, we are out of time. In fact, I let us go over a little. We are right at the turning point. In fact, the very next slide, this will be a good re-entrance point. This is the Theosophical Glossary definition of Hansa, which would be nice. But after that, we move into a summary of the Proem. Such are the basic conceptions on which the Secret Doctrine rests. And so at webinar number 10, we will be finishing the Proem and moving into section 1 of the Secret Doctrine proper, right? So congratulations on hanging in there. I will see you next month, which is Joe still with us? Or VL, maybe you could pull up a calendar and determine when the third Sunday of August is.
It's the 19th of August.
19th of August. So that's our next meeting, folks. And it's a real privilege for me to be hosting this webinar and to have you working with me to understand this admittedly difficult but inspiring material. So until then, we'll see you next time.
Good night, everybody. Thank you, Francis.